Welcome, everyone. My name is Nomali, and a special welcome to Jeff Salzman, Dragpa, and Rollie for joining me in this conversation today. The three of you are going to really be, leading this conversation. Each of you have an incredible truth to share with the rest of us. And each of you who are here to listen in will also have a chance to join in, I'm sure. I believe there's a good reason for us to talk about this conversation of integral spirituality. It's a long conversation that's always going on. Every era, you look at human history, and somehow there's been always a group of people who are interested in this topic of what is spirituality, what is somehow the ultimate truth. What is of ultimate concern? Why are we here? Who am I? Who are we? It's an ongoing conversation. It's an evolving conversation. And so let me set a little bit of context for this conversation. First of all, because we are a group of integralists who are gathered here, what do we mean by spirituality? So Ken Wilber talked about that there are four different meanings to spirituality. Okay. One is that spirituality is our experience at the highest level of any developmental line. So those of us who are integralists, we know that Ken Wilber talks about lines of development. So any developmental line, whether it's cognitive, emotional, spiritual, kinesthetic, cookery, whatever it is, the different lines of development, when we can inhabit a very high level of development in any of those lines, that is a spiritual way of being. That is a spirituality. The second bullet point, spirituality is a developmental line in and of itself. As an example, James Fowler researched stages of faith development, and that's one example of how spirituality is a developmental line in and of itself. The third bullet point is around states of consciousness, that spirituality is a state experience. Peak states, flow states, altered states, and there are stages to even how the states can emerge. And then the last but not least, spirituality is an attitude, like love and kindness and gratefulness. So I'm going to keep going for a little bit here before we start talking, just to give you the sense of what an integral spirituality entails. We can look at spirit in all four quadrants, or the big three. As an example, Jesus talked about God in third person. Jesus talked to or with God in second person, the I-thou relationship. And Jesus talked as God, the first person experience as God. And so I'm just using Jesus here, but we can all do that, and we all ought to be doing that. Spirit is evolving. We can look at spirit through the stages. And this is just one example of that, where James Fowler researched the stages of faith development. Spirituality is a state experience. There are natural states within which we can experience life as spirit, waking, dreaming, sleeping. There are altered states that are psychedelic or drug-induced states, or psychodrama. There are endogenous trained states, which we gain and improve procedurally through meditation, for example. Peak states, flow states, right? We're all aware of these things. We can also go into subtle energies and subtle bodies. It's never ending, this topic. And then there's the Wilber-Combs lattice. How are we speaking about any of this? What state are we inhabiting, and how are we interpreting that state, whether it's a mystical state, for example, Evelyn Underhill's states, this idea that whatever we're experiencing, even if whether it's a spiritual state, we interpret it from a specific stage. So there's that, right? And there's an infinite number of types of spirituality and spiritual practice. And there's a never ending as far as that's concerned too. There is practices to help us wake up, grow up, clean up, show up, rest up, as I learned from Dragpa. There's nature mysticism, deity mysticism, formless mysticism. And here's the whole concept, the whole topic of spirituality must come into the domain of practice. And here's integral life practice, or integral transformative practice, or ecology of practices. And John Vervaeke speaks about the 4 P's of knowing and the 6 E's of cognitive science. We can look at spirituality through these lenses. When we're speaking of development in general, because integralists like to speak about development, in cognitive development, we ask a question of what am I aware of? When we research self or ego development, we ask the question of who am I? When we're studying emotional development, we ask the question of how do I feel about this? When we're learning about values, the question is what's significant to me? In moral development, what should I do? In needs evaluation, we ask, what do I need? In spiritual development, we ask the question, what is of ultimate concern? So as integralists, what can we ask? What might that question be? What is of ultimate concern? We keep going. There are controversial questions we need to ask and explore, such as this one. Is the enlightenment of the Buddha who lived 2,500 years ago the same as what enlightenment might entail if he were alive today? Very controversial question. What does an end goal and or a directionality mean to you in your spirituality? The ideas of teleology here. Then there's relative reality and ultimate reality. Duality and non-duality. Then there's first tier spirituality, second tier spirituality, and a third tier spirituality where the spiritual magic really begins. And let's not go there. I'm just putting this down here because these are the third tier stages and how they've been explained to us, right? What is God, spirit, reality, whatever you want to call it? What is it to you? So integral spirituality is a complex topic. We can bring in all this complexity, but let us also remember that it can be as simple as this. That perhaps after all, it is just a beautiful scroll on a piece of paper. So with that, let me just stop sharing my screen and I'll go to Jeff. I'll start with Jeff. Jeff, share with us why this is an important topic for you.
Oh my God. Well, first of all, that was fantastic, Molly. I mean, I am transmitted. And you really do, you know, present the potential that we have with integral spirituality. It's like, if you think of these stages of development, they're radically more complex, one to the next. In terms of, if you think of what modernity brought us that we can think about that was not thought about before. Of course, we lose a lot too. But so with integral, it's like we have the whole smorgasbord, you know, of all of the ways that we can be spiritual, all of the things you talked about, talking about God, talking as God, you know, all of it. So there's two responses I have to that. One is I'm thrilled by it. And the other is I'm overwhelmed by it. And so where I am right now, and I'm a moving target too here, is that the one thing about integral that is the magic part to me is emergence itself. That 13.8 billion years ago, something blew out of nothing and has complexified into this world that we live in and the conversation that we're having right now. And there's something going on there. And I'm a part of that. And I'm not here by accident because the whole thing has meaning. It just has to have meaning because goodness, truth, and beauty is being created through their opposites often. I mean, evolution, beautiful, not pretty. that this is, one of the sort of realizations of it too. But so then if I am an evolving being, as we all are, what's the next thing I want to grow into? And with this smorgasbord of spiritual options, what is it that's most alive for me? Is I think the way that we could carve a path through this. Ken would talk about, there's really two things that we're doing here with integral spirituality. One is we can practice our indigenous religion. We can be integral Christians. We can be integral Buddhists. We can bring integral to the lineage that we're at. And the good thing there is that we stay focused and we use this container. And then the other is that we are, have the option of drinking from many wells. And how do we chase many rabbits and catch none? That's the thing he would always say. It's an old Zen proverb. So you want to sort of stick with one rabbit. I've never wanted to stick with one rabbit. I just haven't. And that's me. And so where I'm at with it is I'm thinking for me, so what's most alive in this whole panoply of spiritual growth options? And for me, it's actually going back in some ways to the faith of my childhood, where I was raised as a little fundamentalist Christian boy in, the Steel Valley in a little town. And I believe Jesus loved me. And the Bible told me so, and all of that. I lost my religion early at 13. I was a rabid atheist at that point. I was actually caused a problem in the church, but we won't go there. But still, that this idea that there is a way for me to have a personal relationship with the loving intelligence that is somehow behind this universe, that is accessible in some way. It's post-mythic. I can't see it as being the only thing, the only way to salvation anymore. That's gone. I can't see it as a man in the sky with a beard. That whole mythology's sort of, science gets rid of that. It's a good thing. There's a lot of baggage that comes with that. But yet, this connection to a loving intelligence that I can call God. I don't know who to call him, her, or it. I have, sometimes I think of spirit guides. What I don't want it to be anymore is just my highest self. I want it to be other than me. And so that's interesting. It's like, Bill Maher talks about, of course, he ridicules religion. His documentary Religious, I think is the name of it. But he talks about the imaginary friend, that people believe in an imaginary friend. Well, that's what I have. And only I don't think it's imaginary. So I'm working on that, but what I do know is that when I ask God, for lack of a better word, to help me to help, there's that appropriate prayer of help me surrender to what is, help me to be my most loving self, help me to drop my, act, all of that. That help me to just wake up to this beautiful day. Those prayers are answered. And that's my experience. And that's why that's the excitement point for me right now.
Thank you, Jeff. Thank you very much. So let me go to Rollie then. Rollie, as you might remember, when we first started talking about this call, we were also talking about the meaning crisis, which is something that in another area of our integral life practice sessions, there's a group of us that are coming together to study the work of John Vervaeke, who is a University of Toronto professor, and we've been really enjoying his work. And he's been talking about the meaning crisis. And so, Rollie, maybe I want to invite you to speak about the same topic, why this is important to you, but perhaps I'll ask you to also speak a little bit about how it relates to the meaning crisis.
Yeah, thank you, Namali. Honored to be here. And thank you, Jeff, for that transmission. Good to be with you. Today's kind of auspicious. It's the vigil of the Feast of Pentecost, so the Feast of the Descent of the Holy Spirit. And for a lot of us, our favorite Ken book was Sex, Ecology, Spirituality. And I think that the subtitle of that book is as brilliant, and it's The Spirit of Evolution. So I see spirit really deeply that way, the animating force behind evolution. And Ken used to speak of a certain time and place in the cosmos that's incredibly powerful. And that is when we can hold the highest state that we possibly can, and we've practiced to the highest stage that we possibly can, and that spirit essentially becomes evolution unadulterated at that point. So spirit pours into evolution at precisely that moment, and it's a great motivation to practice states and stages. I think our recent exploration of Vervaeke has been awesome, and he really speaks about agent arena. So we are all agents in a given arena, and if we can find a good match between that agency and arena, then we make meaning. We can live a meaningful life. And so often what happens in the meaning crisis is that there's a mismatch of agent and arena. We're not aware of the agency that we hold, and we're not perceiving the arena accurately. But if we can get those together, it's a really powerful place. So for me, spirituality has been really coming into deeper and deeper agency and trying to have a better and better understanding of the arena that I'm entering into. And then this wonderful teaching on holarchy, or on that time itself is a holarchy, and that the greater hold-on of Rollie is not Rollie with everybody else. The greater hold-on of Rollie is Rollie tomorrow, or Rollie today. And so, as Whitehead says, we prehend the previous moment, and then we have the choice to add a novel emergent. And that's a very, very powerful action that we can take. So what is the novel emergent that we choose to add in this moment? And that's amazing, because Jeff, 13.8 billion years got us here, but what we add to this moment ripples out for the next 13.8 billion years. It has effects that we may never know. And so with as deep intention as we can as agents in this amazing arena, we have the choice to add something. And for me, Jeff, that would be love. That's what my tradition would tell me, is that love never fails. So if we can infuse, as with our agency, infuse this moment with love, communion in this arena, just has unthinkable and incalculable effects to come. So that's that spirituality for me, is being the deepest, holding the deepest agency I can in the broadest arena I can, and infusing that moment with love as the novel emergent.
Beautiful. Thank you, Rollie. Same question to you, Dragpa. Welcome. And Dragpa, by the way, I didn't actually allow each one of you to give a little introduction of each of you. Most people know you, Jeff. You run the Daily Volva podcast, and you have been a part of the Integral World for a very long time. I met you in 2003 at Naropa University. And Rollie, I met you probably around 2004 when you first came to Boulder and joined Integral Institute. And you are the author of the Integral Christianity book. And you're also very much doing the spiritual hard work of saving our planet in the environmental sense. Dragpa, and instead of me trying to introduce you, I'd love for you to introduce yourself briefly, and then also explore our question.
Great. Thank you. Thank you, Namali. Thank you, Jeff. Thank you, Rollie. Thank you, everyone, for joining. Really sincerely. Thank you, Ken Wilber, and Integral Life, and all the decades of awesomeness that so many people have really laid their lives on the line to transform and, provide these platforms for us, this content, these ideas, these models, and all the centuries of people before. So genuinely, kind of have gratitude for all of you, each and every one of you. Thank you, really, sincerely, really. So I'm a Tibetan Buddhist, and I've been living and serving in small ways at a Tibetan Buddhist meditation center in upstate New York since 2004. And I've been a student of Ken Wilber's work since 1999. And that's probably enough about me. So what is spirituality to me? I mean, thank you, Namali, for all the models and maps and the things, a lot from Wilber and from some amazing other giants that we're so privileged to receive the gems of their hard work and insight. So thank you. It's a big question. I think more and more for me personally, it's become more about attunement. So we get into there's some kind of frictional crisis, and we're looking for meaning, and the world is fracturing and fragmenting, and there's so much to choose from, and there's an overwhelm of stuff that's not so nutritious for us, and also stuff that's really just like gorgeous and amazing. And so this kind of integral worldview, or these integral maps, kind of, if we happen to come across them, all of a sudden there's this amazing burst of relief for so many people. Finally, there's some larger container, a larger pattern, the dots are connecting. There's just this tremendous, like, finally, some anchor points, some coherence that wasn't previously there, like some of the granularity kind of zooms in, and we can zoom out and zoom in and feel and think and like let ourselves be more fully ourselves. And where that goes to, I think, for me, has been that's also a dangerous window, because in any honeymoon period of over romanticizing and absolutizing new models, new people, new places, new religions, all that, we tend to gloss over a lot of the relative relational details of what it's like to actually engage it and participate with it and be with it and see it in ourselves. And so I think the natural next move of that process is to try to attune, I would say, like, simply put, what serves. Of all these models in myself, like, what helps me open into this next kairotic moment of me being more fully engaged, more fully present, more fully connected, more in love, more reciprocal, have more opponent processing, more dynamic, more enmeshed, more caring. And that immediately means, because in the Vervaekian terms, we always are agents in arenas. We're always these selves bumping up against each other and co-creating stuff. And it's the interplay of cause and effect. And the question always becomes, I mean, in an integral framing, and then as that kind of opens and kind of, I'd say, mellows, or we can put color labels like turquoise, or in that sense of not just modeling what would be attuning and what would be helpful, but actually letting it be presenced. Like, and that means the vulnerability of being willing to be with someone in their terms as much as we can, and letting them fill in the details of the arena of the co-created space, and like having that bravery and that openness and that deep care to really want to pay attention and listen and learn and like receive more of the full kind of spiral, the more full dynamic causal kind of like magnificence that's happening, and be with it and try to resonate with it and discern like what I don't want to line up with because it's not serving me either, or what I really want to line up with because it mutually serves. So that question of what serves is like a very essential bodhisattva question, like, and that's always according to my capacities and the arena and the other agents and what they're available for, interested in, traumatized by, talented with. And so it means we need this really sensitive care and concern to reality happening now in a really practical way. Like, what is my arena now? And then what of those tools, those models, those maps that actually are the way, the filtering that I'm actually designing and co-creating and terraforming this arena of this moment right now, which of those tools help open it and ease it and make it kind of turn on and like really vibrate and get more inclusive and comprehensive in all these good integral things that we love, to honor more of the spiral. And yeah, so that's it. Compassion would be an including of another. And part of that another is actually where someone else is bringing awesomeness to the party. A lot of that awesomeness is in me too. And a lot of it I haven't paid attention to or seen, or I'm scared of, or it's dangerous for me to say, hey, this is going on in me too. And that's part of this more turquoise, mellowing, integral kind of worldview level sense of spiritual engagement, where that willingness to like let the spiral fully do its thing and start resonating in unfamiliar ways and have emergence emerge.
Mhm.